Would it be a sit down video if we didn't have Crumble interrupting us drinking? I will miss that sound so much. So today I thought I would talk about rat introductions, specifically what to do if it starts to go wrong or not quite as expected, because doing this can be really daunting and scary. Even after all of the ones that I've done, I still dread doing it beforehand because every rat is different. You don't always know exactly how they're going to react in the moment, so it is quite a daunting and scary process and it doesn't always go smoothly. So I thought I would talk about that. And obviously I've shown various different videos of introducing my rats in the past. Obviously that is my specific rats and their behaviours. I can only really show and talk about what they're doing and it doesn't cover all of the bases, so I thought this might be helpful. The first point before starting any introductions is make sure you research how to do this beforehand. The most common method in the UK and the one we tend to recommend is the carrier method, but whatever method you decide on, just make sure you are using a method. Don't just throw the rat straight into the cage and hope for the best. Some rats might tolerate this and might not be territorial and might not fight and cause injuries, but most rats are going to be territorial of their space and their cage if you're not introducing them properly, and this can result in injuries or even death. So just make sure you're following a proper introduction process, because otherwise you're kind of asking for a disaster to happen, unless of course you've got very young rats that are 8 weeks old or younger and you're adding other baby rats that are 8 weeks old or younger. Generally with babies of that age you can just put them together without any issues, but most rats, older rats, are going to be quite territorial and you want to follow the proper methods. The next mistake people make is getting very tiny baby rats and immediately putting them in with fully grown adults and setting themselves up for loss. I've seen so many comments over the years of people getting 5-6 week old baby rats and immediately putting them straight in with fully grown big male rats, and whether they intended to or not, they have been killed in the process, and that has then made those people shy away from trying again and leaving that rat by itself. So don't set yourself up for failure by trying it too soon. Make sure your rats are a good age and a good weight. Generally you want to wait until they're about 8 weeks old to be strong enough and developed enough to withstand introductions, and also make sure they're a good weight. Females should be about 180 grams and males roughly about 200 grams before attempting introductions with older rats. When it comes to actually doing certain methods of introductions, things like the carrier method or the carrier method combined with the neutral space method, I've done both of these in the past. I've done the neutral space where I put them all in the bathtub or the shower and then move on to the carrier method, but sometimes in the past with certain rats I've had to skip this stage to actually progress and stop initial fights. One particular introduction that I was doing, I was starting with a neutral space as I'd always done at that point, and it was just a nightmare. The babies were jumping out of the bathtub and refusing to go anywhere near the adults and were just running away from them. They hadn't even been given a reason to do it, but they were just very fearful, and this then escalated the situation because the adults were starting to get aggravated that they couldn't get anywhere near them. All they probably wanted to do was sniff them, maybe pin them, assert their dominance, and then move on. But it was a bit pointless because nobody was going near each other, and I reached out to 2 of my friends that have been keeping rats longer than I have, and they said just put them all into the carrier, skip this stage because it's obviously not working, and that can be quite daunting just to shove them all into a carrier straight away, but sometimes you have to do it if they're not interacting and they're actively avoiding each other. So that would be my tip for you if you are struggling with the neutral space and they're not going anywhere near each other, or they're jumping out of the bath or off the bed and you just can't get them to interact. You may have to skip straight to the carrier method. Obviously with this, be careful, keep a close eye on them because you can't intervene as quickly as if you were doing the neutral space, but it can sometimes be beneficial to skip that part of introductions if it is a part of your normal routine. So you've put the rats together and 2 of them are starting to have a scuffle or disagreement. As tempting as it is, try not to intervene too early. I'm guilty of doing this sometimes, but if you intervene because of your own nerves and stop the interactions too soon, this is only going to set you back. So try not to intervene too much unless things start getting really bad. This is how rats will sort out their hierarchy, by pushing and pinning each other. It is fairly normal behaviour, so try not to let your nerves get the better of you and separate them too quickly. Just watch them very carefully and intervene only if you have to. If you feel like it's been going on for a bit too long or they're getting a bit too violent with each other, there are things you can do to break up the fight without having to physically separate them and lose all of the progress of the introductions. Things like tapping on the carrier or gently shaking the carrier. Even having a spray bottle on hand just to break up any fights can be quite helpful. I know it sounds horrible, but things like also having a vacuum cleaner or hairdryer to turn on if they fight, just to distract them. This is often just enough to have them separate, calm down, and often after this, after the initial scuffle, they don't tend to have another one again. My next point is sometimes people misunderstand the carry method. Sometimes they will start the process and then give the rats a break, put them back into their respective cages, and then start the entire process again the next day. This is quite counterproductive and also just prolongs the stress of the rats. Once they're in intros, unless there's any major reason to stop it, keep them in it. But if one of your rats in the instructions is just not settling, if they're particularly angry or puffed up, or even if they've drawn blood on one of the other rats in their scuffles, sometimes it's time to reassess and take a step back. Sometimes just giving them a day to cool off, stop the instructions and try again another day. Sometimes that alone can be really helpful. If they're in one of the later stages of the carry method and you're having these problems, if they're fighting or they just won't settle down, sometimes this can be because you rushed them into the stage too soon and you have to go back a step. I know it's really tempting when they're in smaller cages to want to rush the whole process and give them a bigger cage as quick as possible. But this can be counterproductive and set you back a bit. Any setbacks you do have, if they're fighting or they won't settle, go back down a stage, go back down in the cage size, and this usually helps. If the problems persist, either you've got stuck in a certain stage and you can't get them past that without them fighting, or you try to reintroduce them again and it's not worked, unless of course one of the rats has badly bitten one of the others and it's not just something superficial like nicking their ear or something. In that case, if they have badly bitten, then I don't recommend trying to introduce them again. But if you have retried introductions and it's still not working, you might have to look at other options. In some cases, if your rat is being particularly aggressive towards the other rats or just one rat in the group and you can't get them to live together, it may be time to consider neutering or even spaying that rat. In a lot of cases, it's hormonal aggression that's the issue. This tends to be most common around 6 months old when their hormones are going crazy, and neutering them can drastically reduce all of their testosterone and other hormones, and it can really help. Out of the 6 rats I've had to have neutered for being a pain during intros, ranging from 4 months old all the way to over a year old, all but one of them, which was Bagel, and he is his own separate case, all but one of them has worked and really helped. Now, I don't have female rats, but I do know a few people that have had to spay females because of aggression, and it has also really helped to reduce their hormones and make a much more stable rat that can live easier with other rats. So after you've had them neutered or maybe even spayed, you've waited the 6 weeks for the hormones to die down and it's time to try introductions again. Just take it slowly. If after all of this you try again, they're still fighting, sometimes it's time to look at other options because not every rat is going to get along with every other rat they come across. They may need a different group, you may have to split your current group into 2 separate groups that actually get along, or you might even have to house them with the opposite sex. If this is not something you can facilitate, if you don't have space for more rats or space to split your groups, you might have to consider doing the best thing for them and finding someone else that can try them with their rats and rehoming them to that person. This is something that I had to do quite recently with a very aggressive rat that did not like me or any of my other rats, and he is now luckily living with another male rat, but that is the 3rd group that he was tried with. Sometimes it just takes a couple of tries to find the right fit. But most importantly, it is not acceptable or in that rat's best interest to try intros once, twice, and then give up because it's too hard and condemn that rat to a life of loneliness. You have to exhaust all of your options available and sometimes put your own feelings aside and do the right thing for them. So generally my tips when it comes to introductions and trickier introductions is don't panic, don't rush. It's better for rats to only go through intros once and be in smaller cages for slightly longer than you feel comfortable with or you'd like them to, just to ensure that it works, rather than doing this over and over again over the span of a few months. If you do get stuck and you're not too sure of rat behaviour or what your rats are doing in the moment, the best thing to do is film a video of this and join either a forum or a Facebook group, things like Rat Care UK, and post a video in the moment. You can get comments real time from experienced owners and breeders that can help you fairly quickly and give you tips and advice and tell you what's actually going on with your rats. So that would be my biggest tip. If you're getting stuck, join some sort of community to post a video, and there's people that can help you. But I hope this video has been helpful in troubleshooting some issues you might come across when trying to introduce rats. For social animals, sometimes they just don't play ball and they don't make our lives easy, but we have to try our best. I hope this video has been interesting and helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!